Hi, how are you today? This is Terry from knitting101.org, and I am putting together a quick video, sort of an emergency knitting video for a knitter who's having problems with KFB, and it sounds as though it might be some tension. So it could be the use of the needles and how she or he is progressing through the knitting, and in reference to progressing knitting, how the needles are moving through the stitches. So one, you're just going to see my hands and hear me, and I'm going to get through this real quick, and I hope that this helps. If you have any other questions out there, please don't hesitate. I'm happy to help. No knitting question is too big or too small. Everybody has their moments in knitting. And so let's get right to the quick and dirty of it all. So KFB, which means knit front and back. We're going to knit-wise. I'm going to knit what's called throwing, or I'm going to use the method of knitting that's referred to as throwing. It's right-handed, or it's also English, so if that helps. Now, if you have questions about other approaches, don't hesitate. I actually knit continental, and I knit a few other approaches, so I'm happy to help. This happens to be right-handed. So you're going to knit as normal through your stitch. Pick up your stitch. Okay. And your right needle, you will wrap. Now you'll see me wrap mainly from back to front, but you know, if you're new to knitting, don't worry, you can knit from front to back as well. How you wrap your right needle is equated to being left and right-handed. We each knit who we naturally are. Whether you're left or right-handed or you're ambidextrous, even if you're ambidextrous, you still have one way that you knit versus another. I'm both left and right-handed, so I don't usually pay attention to how I wrap my needle, but my knitters in my classes tend to tell me I knit from front to back. So I'm wrapping my needle, and I'm going to keep track of my frame here. Now, as you see, I'm knitting. I want you to see what goes on here. Okay, oops, let me move my needle. Okay, push this through. Okay, and there's your knit. Now, we're not done. Normally, if you were knitting, you would just go ahead and slip this stitch off and go to the next stitch and knit or purl accordingly. But we're not doing that today. We're at this moment. We just did the knit in front. Now we're going to knit through the back. And how you do that, and remember, when you're knitting, you can pull in your stitch, it's fine. Give yourself a little bit of excess movement, a little extra movement. So now what we're going to do is take the needle, come in through the stitch, go out the back loop, wrap your needle. That time I wrapped from back to front. Push your stitch back through this, push your needle back through the stitch, as you can see here. And I'm going to make certain you can see what's going on here. Oops, there we go. Set new stitch. There's your second stitch. That's coming from the back of the loop, and where my thumb is on my left hand, I'm pushing that stitch off the right needle. Off the left needle. I have two stitches. So let's do that again. We are working with one stitch right here on the left needle, where my index finger is on my left hand. And, oops, let's see if I can do this. Come in from the bottom of that stitch. There we go. So we're going to set up for knitting through the front loop. So wrap, push back, pushing, you see how I'm pushing through. There's my new stitch. That's my first stitch. This is part of an increase. And because it's an increase, that stitch on the left needle is not moving. My right needle will twist slightly and hover over the stitch that is on the left needle, as you can see. And as if you're jumping off a diving board, you're going to go straight into that stitch. Move my fingers out of the way here. And then you're going to go out the back loop and wrap. Okay, push the needle back through. So you're still knitting. It might look a bit awkward, but it's the same approach. You're still going through the process of knitting. Watch my needles. Whenever I'm knitting, on a side note, I always maintain contact. The two needles always maintain contact. If I do that, no matter how complicated the stitch is, no matter how small the yarn is, no matter how thick it is, if you maintain contact the entire time, your yarn, your stitch will not come off at any time. Okay? So turning it around so you can see. Okay. There's my new stitch right there where my thumb is. Now I'm going to take what's on the left needle and pop it off because now I'm done. And I have those two new stitches. There's my knit stitch plus the increase. That was knitting, this is the one that was knit through the front loop. This stitch was knit through the back loop. So one last time. Okay, I'm knitting. Okay, wrap and sort of dumpster diving in a way, going back into that loop, out the back loop, wrap, push through, push through. So there's no twisting or turning. It's very simple movement. And pop up. Okay. I did say one last time, but you know what? One last time. So knit. Okay. If you're having problems getting into your knit stitch, it's okay. Just take a moment to widen the stitch slightly. Now we're in. This is my left needle, that's my right needle. Wrap my right needle, push the right needle back through. Okay. And you're knitting. That's all you're doing. See how I maintain contact? Because if you're knitting through the back, through any time you're knitting, at one point you're not going to see your stitch. So it's good just to maintain contact. Come through. That's my knit of KFB. And now, as you see, I pull out. I want a little slack on that stitch. It's okay to pull. It's not going to go very far. You move it over. And it's as if you're coming off of you're wanting to dive in or nose dive into the stitch. That's literally what you're doing. You're nose diving into the stitch and out the back loop. You're not twisting, you're not turning, you're going straight into the stitch. And then you come out the back loop. Wrap, push back. I'm going to hold onto the yarn for a little bit of tension. That will help me as well. Push. Push, and I want you to see the stitch. See that new stitch like a little bud coming up? Pushing it through. That's your back loop. And the original stitch, now that we're done, can be popped off of the left needle. That's it. That's KFB. It's very straightforward. Now, if you have any other questions, I'm sorry for this awkward video. I will adjust this for the next video. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. There's no question that's too big or too small. We all knitters come in the same shape and size, and we have to learn at some point. So never be embarrassed. Don't hesitate. Do not suffer in silence. If you have a problem, let somebody know. Let me know. I'm happy to help. This will be posted to the Facebook emergency stitches for knitters. And again, do not hesitate if you have any questions whatsoever. And if this video is not clear, let me know. I will happily adjust and make a video that works for you. I look forward to hearing your questions, and if you have concerns, hey, drop me a line. In the meantime, happy knitting, and ciao for now.